Welcome to the Fantasy Formula Podcast, where we use fake money to buy real F1 teams to win imaginary points.
It's been a little while. Thanks for sticking with us. It's been a couple weeks now.
It has. I did a monologue version late last week.
You did.
Yeah, no, you and I haven't done an actual correct podcast since right as soon as the break started.
Yeah, but now we're staring in the face of Austin this weekend.
Right.
Another race coming up, and again, so this is new guy outside looking in perspective. There, each season offers so much. If I think back to week one, the landscape has changed so tremendously. You have some entirely new drivers. You have, what week one were your stalwart, reliable, point getting drivers that that if you juxtapose then and now, it's totally different. Red Bull is not what, if you say Red Bull now, it's not what Red Bull was week one.
Nope.
If you say Mercedes now, it's another planet from where Mercedes was week one. McLaren went from this glimmer of hope to no, they're the new Balrog. It's so exciting, man. And again, I think what surprises me, and I think the benefit of looking at all of this through the fantasy lens is, man, I love watching Haas and Baby RB.
Right.
I still couldn't care less about Alpine and Pick Sauber, but even Williams, man. We were rooting for our countryman Logan Sargent all this time. He's gone, but you know what? It's still exciting because now, wait, was it Colapinto?
Yeah, Colapinto.
Okay, Colapinto comes in.
He comes in, almost gets points.
Dude can drive, and he's not going to be on Williams next year.
Right.
He's got to go somewhere, and there's still some open seats.
Yeah.
And I'm giddy about where that could be because again, then you look at week 1, 2025, from week 1, 2024, and again, you have a whole new cast of characters. All of whom you still very much care. Again, almost all of whom you still very much care about.
Right.
And and there's going to be there's going to be a couple tearful goodbyes. There's already been a couple. Danny Ricciardo, man. He's got to show up on Drive to. I mean, he'll be all over this upcoming season of Drive to Survive, because that'll be season 6. But the following year, he's got to find a way, either doing some kind of commentary.
You're a fool if you don't get him involved somehow.
I think he probably owes a lot of his recognition to that show, but he is. I think you could safely say he is also the glue of that show.
I would agree.
Where you're going to have your stereotypical fill in the blank driver who's got some kind of generic European accents, who's a little smarmy but really, really fast. There will always be those.
Yeah.
I don't know how often you're going to have a Danny Ricciardo.
No, and as soon as somebody's like, well, it's just his charisma, it's just his personality, right? It's just because he's, snarky, funny, doesn't take himself too seriously,
a little bit reckless,
yeah. Right? But the thing is, the dude's won. Like, he's a multi-time race winner. He's been in it for a bazillion races. He has a racing career that spans 4 F1 teams. Like, this dude's been in it. He's a good driver, and the fact that he has this charisma and that he does, like, just as soon as he opens his mouth, people flock to him.
Sure.
And the fact that we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah. And again, he's the ultimate human character too, just because, again, he's likable, but he's also kind of an idiot sometimes. And then he's had multiple redemption arcs.
Yeah.
You just want to see him do well. And I think every sport has their guy that just seems to truly enjoy. He takes a step back, and and yes, there's the endorsements, yes, there's the money, yes, there's you travel around the world, and a lot of them are like, well, this is my profession, but he's like, he stops and looks around and says, look how cool all this is,
right?
Can you believe we get to do this? I mean, that's infectious.
Like, this is my own personal analysis. Okay, this is something when I watch the replays and watch the slow motion back when it happened. It's free practice 3. He's driving this big sweeping turn. The car in front of him has spun out and hit the wall, and he's on the same racing line that car is.
Yep.
So if he ducks down to the inside of the track, he's going to spin out just like that guy does. If he keeps going straight, he's just going to broadside this crashed car. If he turns to the right, he's going to basically drive into the wall. And so, of course, he hits the brakes, he does all that, but he's just going too fast. He keeps his hands on the steering wheel to steer into the wall, breaks his hand because you're supposed to let go of the steering wheel before you hit the wall. He kept
Oh,
his
really?
hands on.
Okay.
Yeah, you're supposed
Oh,
to. And
that's
so
new to me.
because the
Okay.
amount of force that gets transitioned through the tires,
Oh, sure.
if you ever watch the onboard camera when a car crashes, first thing they do is in F1 and Indy, they
Oh,
they keep
wow.
their hand off the steering wheel, and he didn't do that. He kept his hand on the steering wheel so he'd actually steer into the wall and not hit the other car that was crashed.
Okay.
So he literally sacrificed himself because in that split second, the other two options would have met with disaster.
Sure.
So he went with the clean kill. Again, that's my own analysis. So anyway, that's just my little monologue about Danny Rick. But I love that dude. Never met him.
Sure.
Talk like I'm his friend, but he's awesome.
Yeah, no, hey, actually, this discussion leads me to want to do just I think in the off season, we have to do a follow up episode of like in the last 2 years, like a where are they now? Those who are no longer Formula One
Ooh,
drivers.
that would be
Because
good. There's
again,
plenty of
I
them.
still think Nick Gervais,
Yeah.
who had 10 races with AlphaTauri, which is now RB or V
Mhm.
carb or whatever you want to call him these days. Like what did he do? What is he doing now?
He won Le Mans.
Did he
He
really?
did.
See,
Nick DeVries won Le Mans. He was on the winning team at Le Mans in 2020, and I think it was whatever the last year was. I think it's already happened this year. So in 2024, he won Le Mans.
here's and that's the so
And if I'm
there
wrong, please cite me. I'm very confident that that's what happened.
because yeah, there's got to be some
Yeah.
really cool bounce back stories,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got like the really odd ones like Mazepin from Haas who got fired, and now he's in the gun sports. I think
Right.
he's doing like shooting. I don't
I
know if he
mean,
got
fast reflexes.
I don't
Good
know
on
if I
him.
don't know if
But
he got inspired by the Turkish shooter who got second at the Olympics. Did you see that guy?
yeah, dude.
Okay,
Like
so for those of you who don't know, like one of the I think it was South
I
Korea,
think I
South
forget, but yeah.
so so the gun sports don't get a lot of love is because they're super boring to watch, but very impressive. But this one I think the South Korean women's like pistol Olympic shooter, like she was all kitted out. Like she had these crazy glasses that had like that provided like strategic blind spots.
Yeah.
She had a little like manga anime stuffed animal hanging like from her daughter hanging out of her pocket. She looked like a comic book character. She looked so cool, and she was just super tactical looking. And then you got the guy from Turkey. He looks like just a tired, kind of pissed off dad like at a rest stop, like walking away from his van full of
Right.
children, and he's got a white polo shirt on, and he gets second in the Olympics.
He has like one hand in his
One hand
pocket.
in his pocket, which is a fairly standard stance.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But it also it lent itself to the just like, oh, I can't wait to be done with this,
Right.
you know?
But I like that idea that we can in the off season go in and kind of like dig up where they are now and
Yeah,
what they're doing and see who's still driving and because
sure,
there's a lot of other races out there that aren't Formula One.
yeah.
You know, like FIA has a lot, like the Porsche series and whatever. But I've been watching the F1 Academy
Oh, yeah,
recently,
yeah, yeah.
which is it's a all female ages like 16 to 25 or something, but it's basically a 175 horsepower formula car,
Oh, okay.
and you can only race in it 2 seasons before you're out, and if you win your first championship, then you can't race in it anymore.
Oh,
Things like that.
okay, so now I know there are different. I know there's like a Honda Academy, there's a Ferrari Academy, there's a
Mhm.
so the different constructors have their own training ranks.
Correct.
Is is this in correlation with the Formula One Academy, or is
It
that a separate
it's
thing?
it's a separate thing,
Okay,
but what F1 Academy is that's all the same car, all the same tire, all the same rules.
okay.
So it's
It
stock
really
car.
it just comes
And
down to
then
the driver. Yeah.
they were very clear about this in their language, being, in the line of work that we are, they're uh that when the teams sponsor cars,
Hmm.
they just put their paint job on it. They don't
And
have
that's it.
team. No, that's it. Every car is programmed to run the exact same way. There's no pit stops in the races. Each race is only 13
Oh
laps.
wow. Okay.
All of this, and the tire strategy comes down to we get so many sets of tires for there's 2 races on a weekend in Formula Academy in F1 Academy. Each race is like 13 laps, and the fastest uh and when you qualify for both races in the same qualifying. So whoever gets the first fastest lap, everyone's first fastest lap are racked and stacked. Everyone's second fastest lap is racked and stacked, and that's your and that's your pole position for both races.
Okay.
And then you race each other. And again, I'm not digging because I'm not talking bad about F1 Academy. These drivers are good. You can tell they are good. I sat down in a F1 Porsche, F1's an a FIA, I think, Porsche simulator and just crashed horribly. All right.
Yeah.
There is one caution. I did the quick analysis in F1 Academy, at least the ones I've watched. There's 2 to 3 crashes per race, or cautions per race. Each race is 13 laps, and they're 170 horsepower Formula cars.
Wow.
So it's a dynamic thing, but unlike and then we'll actually get back to talk about F1
Oh, sure. No,
fantasy
this
F1.
is
But like what I enjoy about it is these are good drivers, but the talk isn't, oh, are they going to be the best in the world? The talk is, no, here are these young drivers who, you know, got their seat because they are good at racing.
yeah.
They're going to race here for 1, maybe 2 seasons,
Hmm.
and then they're going to go off into the world of motorsports with this pedigree of racing
Yeah,
for the
it'll
FIA.
it'll be, hey, yeah, here's a pool of talent
Exactly.
that multiple entities can draw from
Because now you have somebody who has literally sat in a FIA Formula car and raced on a no kidding Formula track on a no kidding Formula One weekend
without all the subjectivity
without all the
of
subjectivity.
completely different constructors. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all the same, and you know who beats who, how it goes, and they make some silly, in quote, silly mistakes that I didn't know was a mistake until the announcers were like, no, that they shouldn't have done that. I'm like, oh, cool. So it's a lot more interesting to watch. I wasn't trying to have this be a commercial for F1 Academy,
Yeah.
but it's super interesting to watch, and it's just a whole nother angle of racing. And I forget where I was going with this. What were we talking about before I started getting in how
We
cool F1
we were
Academy
we
was?
were talking about where people went to. You know
Oh,
what?
that's right. No, we're talking about, yeah, no, where people are going. So that opened up my eyes to the fact that, we always think that, oh, well, I'm gonna be an F1 driver. And as soon as I'm not an F1 driver,
I'm
well then
done.
I'm
Yeah.
done. No, there's a whole wide world of motorsports literally out there. And
Yeah.
this F1 Academy is, specifically geared towards, giving females the representation and the chance to succeed in the sport. But also, it's like, no, it's Porsche series. There's this, there's that, there's every place else they can go with this pedigree that they get. So it's super cool.
Oh,
It's
okay. Well,
super cool. There's a lot of really good drivers, like a lot of really strong personalities in there,
well,
and
sure.
yeah,
Well, that's awesome. I didn't have an awareness of that. Thank you
yeah,
for that.
absolutely.
So on a very similar and equally serious note, now I think we both played our fair share of Mario Kart, uh, and most of the weapons available are fairly unrealistic. I think the best transferable one you could come up with would be like the banana peels.
Absolutely.
Now, important question: do you think that if each Formula One car was outfitted with a banana peel launcher, would that be an effective thing
Oh,
if a rival were to hit a banana peel? Do you think based on the lack of tread on the tires and just how fine tuned everything is, do you think that could be an effective weapon to mess up your opponent?
I do. And here's my source. So this isn't just me cockamamie,
Okay,
going
no,
off on it.
sure, sure.
Here's the reason why. I was watching. Oh my gosh, put a microphone in front of me and I forget what's going on. The analysis that plays on F1.com. I can't believe I'm forgetting this dude's name. He's one of the announcers. He's good. Whatever. He used to race in F1.
You'll remember it tomorrow
I
night.
will.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll have to do an addendum or something. But anyway, Palmer. Is that seems Palmer? Anyway, he does an analysis after every race,
Okay.
and it's super good, super interesting. I learn a lot from it.
Cool.
And one of the things he's talking about the last race was how Franco Colapinto was able to pass so many people. Everybody else got on the outside line, and it was dusty. And I'm paraphrasing greatly. Everybody out there who knows more about F1 than me is like, dude, you're getting like 20% of it. The cars that were on the outside of the turn, it was so dusty they couldn't turn into the apex or they would spin out. So they
Okay.
had to stay on the outside because they
Sure.
didn't have the traction. Colapinto, who already had the inside lane, was able to hug the apex and pass a bunch of people. So seeing as how cars at this level spin out due to dust on their tires, and because they have dust on their tires, they can't get on the race. They know they can't get on the racing line because of dust.
Yeah.
My guess is if there was a banana peel shooter. If you hit somebody's tire with a banana peel, I'm guessing that would cause
They're
significant
they're
degradation.
they're gonna lose that
I
grip.
think they would. I think they
Oh
would.
man,
That would
I
be
would
so good,
watch that all day.
right? Can you
Yeah.
imagine? Oh, can you imagine? I mean, just even playing Mario Kart with a bunch of F1 drivers, like that'd just be
That'd be a
ridiculous.
blast. Yeah, no, absolutely. But like, and then you know that they would have like each constructor would have like a fruit analyst on their
Oh,
staff. They'd be like, where'd you get those plantains? Like, did you pre-age them? There would instantly be a banana
oh, there
specialist
would be.
or two.
Right?
Yeah.
You'd have stats for how long we can't pick the banana until
Oh yeah,
this time, and it has to get put in a sprinter van or a private plane and flown so it's loaded
just
into the banana launcher within
an
this many
entire
hours.
rule book.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh! Can you imagine the FIA rule book about your banana launcher?
Yeah, but here's the thing: like, if if I ended up being the banana man of a F1 constructor, do you know how fully seriously I would take
Oh,
myself? Like,
absolutely.
I'd be like, oh no, no, I'm definitely I'm with a racing team. I have a very technical position. You wouldn't
Oh, you
understand it.
wouldn't
Yeah.
understand it. I run the stats and do the analysis
Anyway,
and load the
yes, you
banana.
may buy me another drink.
Right. When I'll talk, crap about Aston Martin, with the best of them, but also as soon as Aston Martin offered me any sort of job to be remotely associated to their F1
Oh,
team,
are you
I
kidding
would
me?
take it right away. Are you kidding? And I'd wear the Aston Martin shirt
Oh, for
and I would
sure.
root for everything Aston Martin.
Oh,
Like, come on, man.
I would dress up. I would dress up like James Bond. Oh,
Oh,
actually, he hasn't driven an Aston Martin since what? Die Another Day. I think it was the
I
last.
think so. I
I think that was
forget.
the
Yeah.
last Pierce Brosnan James Bond where he had the Aston Martin Vanquish
Oh,
that
you're
turned
right.
invisible. It was
Uh-huh. You're right.
they called it the Vanish,
The
and he
Vans
was
shotguns.
driving it all over the ice. It was pretty
Oh
cool.
yeah. Oh, that was
So
so good.
did
That
you
was
know
one with, yeah, with
after
Halle Berry.
production wrapped up on that one, which is one of the silliest James Bond movies ever, by the
It
way, they
yeah.
actually gave Pierce Brosnan that Aston Martin, and Halle Berry, she
She played the American agent in that movie.
yes,
Yeah.
they gave her that the retro modern Ford Thunderbird, which man, what a ripoff compared to like your
Right?
co-star just got an Aston Martin, and you're like, here's a Ford Thunderbird that'll be a production and not do well for several years, but
Oh.
you know,
Well, and you're Halle Berry. Like you're an A-list actor
at that
like at
time,
that
yeah.
time. Like, oh
Yeah.
gosh.
So,
That's funny.
what are you gonna do?
I don't know. I guess we should probably go ahead and
I'm
talk
sorry.
about.
Yeah,
No, I mean, we're talking about all things remotely car related. I'm down. So, when it comes to the I don't want to jump straight into fantasy. I kind of want to paint a picture of the real world F1 real
yeah.
quick
Go for it.
because it directly links to the fantasy world. For the constructors, McLaren's in the lead. McLaren passed Red Bull however many races back,
Yeah.
and now McLaren has 516 points in the constructor championship. Now remember, for anybody out there uninitiated, the constructor championship is the one that gets the money. All
Hmm.
right,
Yeah.
from the FIA.
Individual drivers, not so much.
Individual drivers get zero. They just
They
get,
just the glory.
yeah.
Yeah.
But us being the people who enjoy gladiators and enjoy, that person who can go and kill the animal and bring it back to our tribe, and now we know we honor that person and their prowess. We really care about the drivers.
We
Don't
love a
give it.
champion.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
love the champ. That's good. I should summarize it that way. You should be a producer. Um,
One day maybe.
so anyway, so McLaren is 516 points. Red Bull is 475. So they're 36 points
Jeez.
back.
Yeah.
So McLaren is solidly in the lead with the constructors,
Given that there are so few
given that
races
there's
left.
6 races left, and the fact that Red Bull did have the lead and McLaren passed them.
Yeah.
The thing that I was unaware of until the run up to this weekend is that Ferrari has 441 points. They are only 34 points behind Red Bull.
Yeah. When we were doing our meeting summary or our
Yeah.
meeting review here before we recorded, that kind of blew my mind a little bit
Mhm.
because it's throughout the season Ferrari has always been in the conversation, but I didn't realize either how close Ferrari was to overtaking or how
Yeah.
close Red Bull was to potentially falling to third
Mm-hmm.
in the constructors
Yeah,
championship.
me neither. It's ridiculous. So again, before we get into the drivers, to me, that's telling of what's going on with Red Bull.
Oh,
Now, I
yeah.
know that there's some stuff going on in the news right now about how Red Bull, so I guess you're not supposed to be able to adjust your ride height after qualifying before the race, and I guess Red Bull had a mechanism in place to do it. I just heard about it on F1.com, which is where I get all my news from. So I need to learn more about that. And if anybody out there does know what all that's about, then go ahead
Yeah, so
and
is this like a secret pull the lever Kronk type
the way
situation?
they talked about it made it kind of seem like it was.
Yeah,
Made it seem it wasn't anything the driver, again, like anybody who just watched the F1 pre-race show, you're like, wait a minute, that's exactly what they talked about. Yeah, it is. It didn't seem like it was anything that the driver could do inside the cockpit, but it made it seem like it's something that you could do without going through the regular process of adjusting the ride height that all the other cars do.
gotcha.
So in my head, it's, well, is the rule book say you can't adjust the ride height, or does the rule book say you can't adjust all these parts? And if the rule book says you can't adjust all these parts, well, got it. They came up with a new part that's not the rule book.
Yep.
So they're under fire for that. And I know the FIA is just going to probably tell them to fix it. But with that being said, if their ride height's an issue and they're losing capability going into the last 6 races, I expect Red Bull to drop off and have Ferrari pass them.
Yeah. Right. Which
Which,
again, I think it's enough of an upset that McLaren has solidly taken the lead at this point.
yeah,
But again, to be so dominant and in the first half, but that as I
yeah,
say that, they haven't been dominant. Max Verstappen has been dominant in the
yep,
first half, and now that dominance has been taken away, where he's still competitive, but it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to see that car 17 seconds in the
mm-hmm.
lead. Um, you start to realize, oh, they have not been a solid team. He's just been a solid
Yeah,
driver.
no, completely agree. And then that we'll get into Sergio Perez here in a second, because there's plenty to say about that, which some of it's fair, some of it's not. But yeah, so then after Ferrari, you have McLaren. So
Uh-uh. After Ferrari, you've
oh,
got
sorry, after oh no,
Mercedes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, after Ferrari, you have Mercedes. I wrote MERC on my paper, on my notes here, and I
Yeah,
just called it McLaren.
McLaren.
McLaren, exactly. That's how it works. So that's the way the constructors look like going into going to the last 6 races. So how does that translate over to Fantasyland? Well, if you're out there, you know you have 2 constructors in your fantasy team.
Yep.
Red Bull is overpriced. We've been saying it for months.
They were when they
They
were overpriced when they were
they
dominant.
were overpriced when they were dominant, and now that they're slipping and McLaren is in the lead and Ferrari might pass them, as you pointed out again, while we were getting set up for the show, it doesn't matter what happened every other race. What matters is where you are now and where the momentum is now and where things are going now. And it's not with Red Bull, it's with Ferrari.
Exactly. Loyalty cannot be a part of your vocabulary if you're playing fantasy Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
It's about who's heating up, it's about who is showing sustained performance. And when that is no longer the case, you are losing.
Yeah.
So, at this point in the season, we're what, probably 35 minutes into this podcast before there's a lick of actionable advice here. But if you bought Red Bull week 1 and you're like, well, that the price is only going to go up, that was a smart move
Mm-hmm.
for a while.
Yeah.
But I think this is the point to cut them and save yourself maybe $4 million
Mm-hmm.
or more, and pick up a cheaper, better constructor with 2 more reliable, more consistent drivers.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. And I'm not trying to be a fair weather fan for Red Bull. You can love Red Bull all you want.
oh, for
Remember, if
sure.
any F1 team wants somebody to work for them remote from the Midwest of the United States, you have a couple guys here who will be more than willing to do it.
Absolutely.
And then you'll absolutely have my loyalty. However, right now when we're playing just fantasy world, you can't buy into that brand and be like, no, I love this person. If so, then you're not going to be in the top 1%, which is what our goal is.
Oh, correct. And I think another point to illustrate that was, you had mentioned earlier that that in the fantasy point standings, you said, is it about a 150 point gap between Ferrari and then Mercedes below them, correct?
Yeah, there's 157.
Which sounds like, oh my gosh, man, I mean, Ferrari's been just blowing Mercedes out of the water. And yes, from a fantasy perspective, that is true if you have been all in only Ferrari or all in only Mercedes
Yeah.
throughout the entirety of the
That's a good
season.
point.
However, despite that gap, there are multiple stretches of weeks where it made all the sense in the world to be Team Mercedes
Yeah.
because George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are waking up.
Mm-hmm.
So despite that gap, Mercedes has been the better play at various points in the season,
Yeah. No,
which
absolutely.
is bizarre. But again, it's really, you got to look at week to week. You got to look at emerging trends in racer capability, in platform capability as these upgrades have rolled out. Some of them have been extremely effective. Some of
Yeah.
them have made no difference whatsoever, and some of them, like Williams, have cost them,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah, but
And then you have weekends where Ferrari gets a double DNF. Like what? Like
right.
yeah. And
There's
then
weekends
but you can't count on
where
those.
George Russell wins,
And he gets
and then
disqualified.
exactly.
But you can't count on that. You can't count on it and say, you know what, I'm going to stay away from Ferrari because they might get a double DNF. You
Yeah.
can't. As soon as you're doing that, you shouldn't even play fantasy F1,
Well,
man.
it's like, I'm afraid to swing because the pitch might go near my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to happen every now and again.
Then go
You,
sit in the stands with me and eat popcorn. Like, come
correct.
on,
Yeah.
you know. But so yeah, so that's the way it's looking with the constructors is that McLaren's on the rise. McLaren absolutely. Ferrari and Mercedes are very strong right now, and
Yeah.
Red Bull's slipping.
Mm-hmm.
So please, I implore you. I know that maybe Max Verstappen might do really well. Maybe Sergio Perez will get off the schneid right now. But the way it's all looking is just stay away from Red Bull for these last 6 races. Get your McLaren, get your Ferrari, your Mercedes, whoever you love, for your constructors while you can, because as soon as Red Bull does tank anymore, or as soon as both Ferrari or as soon as both Mercedes get a podium, their price is going to jump up by
Oh,
$500,000
absolutely.
each,
Yeah.
and then you're out of. And then as soon as you,
And that could very realistically happen. That,
oh,
like
absolutely,
you saying that isn't like a, well, I know it's
mm-mm,
only once in a blue moon. No, like
nope,
that's a legitimate possibility in any of these remaining
for
6
sure,
weeks.
for sure.
So,
So that's my little take on the constructors. There's the stats, the numbers. Excuse me. McLaren has passed Red Bull in real life. They're 3 points on in away from passing them in fantasy world. And this is where every race constructors and entire teams can get, over 200
sure.
without blinking. And there's a non-zero chance that in real world Ferrari will pass uh, Red Bull
Yeah.
because Ferrari is only 34 points behind. So if Max Verstappen gets a DNF or if Sergio Perez doesn't start pulling stuff out, as soon as both Ferraris do well, and as soon as Max Verstappen is the only driver on his team who does well,
Yeah.
well now he's 2v1, and anybody with any sort of tactical mindset knows 2v1's that's a really bad situation to be in.
Absolutely.
So there it is about the constructors. Anything more you want to touch on about the constructors before we move to the individual drivers?
No, that's great.
So Norris is 34 points ahead of Leclerc.
Yep.
Verstappen is 52 points ahead of Norris. So it is not a mathematical possibility for Norris to pass Verstappen this
Gotcha.
weekend.
Yeah.
But it's still definitely in the realm of possibility over the next 6 races.
Sure. Oh yeah. But for Leclerc to be that close is impressive.
It's still definitely a thing.
Yeah.
So as soon as Max Verstappen starts having bad days, and as soon as, if Verstappen and Norris take each other out, and then suddenly Leclerc does really well, well, now he is definitely right up there with number 2. But even then,
Sure.
he's number 3.
But again, this is why F1's cool, because the exact same thing could happen to Leclerc, because his teammate is Sainz, who is on his way to Williams of all places.
Right.
And so, we've seen it before when he had a more secure spot. Sainz is going to race for himself.
Mm-hmm.
So if it comes down to Ferrari 1-2 or Ferrari 2-3, and there's only a couple laps to go, it's not going to be like McLaren saying, "Hey Lando, can we back off and let Oscar, Oscar's paid his dues." No, it's not. It's
Nothing
not
like
going to
that.
happen.
If anything, and maybe this is weird of me to say, the most dangerous situation Ferrari can be in
Is have them close together.
Is have those guys being wheel to
Oh,
wheel.
you're right, man.
Competing for any position, let alone the top 3.
Yeah.
If you have both Ferrari drivers, P1, P2, or P2, P3, or P2,
Sure.
P4, with 2 laps left.
Oh, this is.
they could take each other out, and they would because they've done it before.
as much as I would love to see Sainz and Albon turn Williams back into a powerhouse of yesteryear,
Yeah.
the reality is at this point in time is like these last 6 races are Sainz's best chance
Mm-hmm.
for glory.
That's true.
You know, he's still going to be a Formula One driver. Great, he's still got years left in him.
He won't be
He
driving Ferrari.
doesn't have an appendix, but he yeah, I mean, it won't be in a
Won't be in a
Ferrari, you
Ferrari.
know. So that's going to be the guy. That's going to be the wild card to watch, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's going to be my focal point because like if if Perez does better and kind of redeems himself and makes a strong case for Red Bull to hang on to his 1-year contract
Mm-hmm.
extension, good on him. But man, yeah, I want to see what Sainz does with the time he's got left.
Absolutely. And as soon as yeah, no, I won't go. I was about to go down a rabbit hole of all the stuff science could do because he's capable. I'm just repeating what you just said.
Oh,
He's
sure.
capable,
Yeah.
and as soon as he's going wheel to wheel with other people, or he's going to wheel to wheel against Leclerc in anger with it from another team.
Sure.
Oh, dude, that'd just be sick. Anyway, I won't hypothesize. Back to my notes where I promise I can read left to right. Who is 8 points behind who? Well, Oscar Piastri is 8 points behind Leclerc.
And that's wild.
Yeah, Piastri has 237. Now I'm looking off my phone from the F1 website to make sure I'm not just misnoting. Oscar Piastri has 237 points. Charles Leclerc has 245 in real world championship points.
That's nuts. See, because like it's not a surprise. It's a surprise that like Leclerc has as many points as he does, just because he's not a headline guy
Mhm.
as much. But it's no secret that he's a great driver.
Yeah,
Piastri's like what?
it's his second year in F1,
Yeah.
and he's won like one Grand Prix, like one or two sprints, I think.
Uh huh.
But yeah, and now
But
in his second season, he's in competition. He's fourth in the championship. He's in competition to be third.
well, I think that's what's gotten it. It feels sneaky, but like the guy's bought real estate on the podium.
Yeah.
You know, like he's always there.
Mm-hmm.
He's won once, but he's always
Always
there. You
Always
know.
there. And what does it say for Ferrari? What does it say? I don't know, man. There's so many ways to look at it. What does it say for Ferrari if the rookie with an asterisk McLaren driver, the second Leclerc, the number two, arguably,
Uh-huh.
McLaren driver is beating your number one driver? Carlos Sainz isn't even part of that. Like, Sainz is 190 points behind, and then Piastri is 237. So, like, there's 47 points between them. So there's so much. And so, okay, I won't go into all those hypotheses. I'm trying to somewhat keep us on track. What does it mean for the fantasy world that this is the way it is? Well, it means if you can get, for those, anybody out there who was able to go Norris, Piastri, and had the brains to keep them
Yeah. Right.
when they were having bad races, because as soon as at the start of the season you could do that.
Yeah.
I remember punching it around, and you could get pretty much an all McLaren team. And I was like, no, man. They're in the slump. They're not doing so hot. They had a bunch of really bad races at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, because
Nah.
I mean, the season started with uh, Norris being wildly expensive based on potential,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was like, well, he could be the next big thing, and he has
And he's
become
become
that.
it.
But at the time, he was I think 24 million to start
Yeah.
without doing what he has done this season.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense. Um, but I think the take if you're saying what does this mean, I think the takeaway is next year you buy McLaren as your constructor,
Right.
and then you fill in the best drivers you can around that.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got two solid competitive guys with several years left, and as long as those the engineers and physicists and space scientists
Right.
working for McLaren keep doing what they're doing, this that's what you want to build your team around.
For sure. No, there's no way around it.
And I think that the thing you want to be eagle-eyed for is what is going to be the price difference between Piastri and Norris, because
Yeah.
if it's similar to Perez and Verstappen from last year, then you're getting a bargain with Piastri.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah, no, absolutely you are, and I think again, I'm not privy to this, but I really think that the F1 game the fantasy F1 game is going to have to kind of revamp what's going on, just
Yeah.
because now you're going to have there's no longer 3 tiers of driver, there's 2.
Yep.
And if that's the way they want it to be, fine. But otherwise, next year it's going to be a sort of thing where you can get 1 or 2 good constructors, 1 strong driver, and then just all the low. Anyway, I
Sure.
won't hypothesize about it.
No, you're good. What else we got?
But what we yeah, sorry. So that's the big takeaways there for kind of like where that's rack and stack, and go for McLaren. Again, in the fantasy world, Max Verstappen, 534 points. Sergio Perez, 279.
Yeah.
Half of it, roughly. So we're all in the top 5 drivers are all 2 McLaren, 2 Ferrari, and 1 Red Bull.
Yep.
So I know I already said it, but Max Verstappen is basically 2v1 against Ferrari and against McLaren and against Mercedes when they happen to get into the top 5.
Yep.
So what does that mean for Perez? There's a lot of I don't know whether it's actual worries about whether he's going to stay in his seat for next year.
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that you posed that question, and then that 2 words, very hard, and that just today, just this afternoon at like 4:18, there's this whole article about with members of the press asking Yuki Tsunoda,
Ooh.
hey, what are your thoughts on, or what has been said to you about potentially being the number 2 Red Bull driver?
Yeah.
And he played it professional. He talked about points he has to work on. He had talked about good communication with the team, but making no indication of any kind that he will be the number 2 driver. But boy, would I be interested in seeing a Yuki Tsunoda as Red Bull, and then Franco Colapinto being hired as the number 2 driver for VCarb, because then you'd have Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto, 2 young guys with a lot of potential, which is what VCarb is supposed to be technically.
Yeah.
So, but I think you made an interesting point about Yuki as a Red Bull driver before we started recording. You want to recap on that a little bit?
It was me just being a little cheeky. Like he's I don't think he's cold enough. Like with Max Verstappen and to an extent like Sergio Perez, there's ice in their veins, man. Like they don't give a darn.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it just shows how little I know about it.
But I think you're right. I think the psychology of it's very interesting. When Max Verstappen wins, he gives every indication that it was completely intentional.
Yeah.
And that it was the plan to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh my God, can you believe this happened?
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, no, this was the intent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I'm gonna give some very silly, cheeky answers to questions.
With Max Verstappen and with Sergio Perez, they would crash their mom if it meant they could win.
Yeah.
I think Yuki Tsunoda is a very strong driver, very good driver. I don't think he would put his mama into the wall.
Yep.
But I don't know, maybe that's just him showing how much discipline he really does have.
I just think it's a great slogan. Like I love, we love our mom too. We love our moms too much to be good at F1. That's all that's stopping us. We love our
moms too much to be good at F1. We should make T-shirts.
Absolutely,
that would be great. From a fantasy standpoint, we have to make sure you get Danny Ricciardo off of your roster, because this is a change that happened. I think I mentioned it in my little monologue podcast. Did we talk about the points?
We did not.
No. So now it used to be, and I actually put this out as a tactic. If you have a driver worth like $5 million, as soon as they're inactive, you can't add them. You cannot add an inactive driver to your roster. But if you keep it there, they're not going to gain you points, but they're not going to lose you points.
Oh, right.
So
okay,
you want to have that hole there to just limit your liability.
Yes. Oh, no, we did talk about this. Yeah, okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
But now they changed the rules because there's so many inactive drivers that now if you have a driver that's inactive on your roster, they take a non-classified for every event they're part of.
Oh, no.
So on a sprint weekend, you'll get -5 points for sprint qualifying. Or no, sprint qualifying doesn't count. You'll take a -20 points for not classifying the sprint race, -5 points for not classifying qualifying, -20 points for not classifying the Grand Prix. So if you keep Daniel Ricciardo on your roster, you will go -45 points every sprint race for the rest of the season.
Okay,
and -25 points every regular
All
Grand
right, so
Prix
it
versus
says
something.
the Formula One trying to maybe maintain engagement with their site. So
Yep. Oh, that's a good point.
if you have a fantasy Formula One team, this is your notice to set an alarm for Friday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and go ahead and make sure that you have active drivers on your team.
Yes.
Otherwise, you are just giving away points. Oh, I just want to say thanks for hanging with us. We will see you after Austin. If you like what you're listening to, please go ahead and leave us a review or just engage us on the socials. We're lonely,
Please.
and we will get back to you. You're still getting in at the ground level, so we will respond. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Cheers.